You're listening to Night Dreams Radio with Gary Anderson.
And here I am. I hope everybody's had a great day. It's been an interesting day for me, but it's been like that all week long. Hey, good news is one of the devices for our broadcast studio came in today, but I didn't have a chance to put it in, so you're going to have to live with whatever my voice sounds like tonight on the radio. Hey, tonight we got a real exciting person, Sylvia, and I'm going to introduce her in a minute. What's cool about her is that she is an investigator in the paranormal. So we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of stuff in the paranormal tonight, about 2 hours worth. So why don't you go get a nice cup of Java, go get a comfy, pull out a nice easy chair, sit back, take your shoes off, put some slippers on, get a cigar or a beer or what have you, and relax and enjoy the show. Hi, Sylvia, you there?
I am here, Gary.
Well, I'm glad to have you on my show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you?
Well, I have always been fascinated with the supernatural and the paranormal, and ghost stories especially. And I'm really not exactly sure how that happened, because I was the biggest chicken when I was a kid. I suffered from a fear of the dark like you would not believe. I was the kid who would slap the light off and run across the room and take a flying leap at the bed from 6 feet away just so nothing under the bed would get me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was just fascinated by ghost stories. But if I had actually ever encountered a ghost at that age, I think my heart would have just stopped and I would have curled up and quit, as they say.
Oh, wow.
But, so...
Mine did, but it's restarted, actually.
Oh, good. So I got over that, and I was able to take that childhood fascination with ghosts and spirits and turn it into something that brings other people joy and excitement. I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, wow. I'm about the same age. I was about 8, 9 years old, and I think I was talking about this the other night on the show. I got stuck in the summers when I was young. We lived in Seattle, but my relatives lived in Oakland, California. So, my dad's brother would host me for the summer. And while I was over at my uncle's house, I ended up at my grandmother's house for a little while, a few nights. And she lived in an apartment. It was built like in the 1800s. So it was an old apartment building. And the bedroom was so huge. And maybe it wasn't huge, but when you're 8, 9 years old, it was huge.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. And, like an old creepy, bed too, and here I was in this big room. And the bed was like in the middle of the room, not off of the side or anything, but in the middle. And she had a walk-in closet. And I was almost asleep, and I heard a little bit of noise, and I didn't think anything of it. And the next thing I did is I looked, and I saw a shadow coming out of this closet, and kind of like go against the wall. And then it went back into the closet. And where her apartment was, okay, there was no way it would have been car lights or lights from the next apartments over. It was no way. And I remember telling my grandmother the next morning, I said, I saw this. And she goes, it's funny you said that. I've been living here for like 20 some years, and I live with it. And they just come and go. And that was my very, very first experience in the paranormal. I wish it would have been my last. I actually had 2 other ones that really, even topped that one. But that was what, got me into the paranormal. I've been into the paranormal for 40 years. I mean, I have digested virtually anything that's out there into my little brain. So, But now let's get back to you. So you were about the same age, and, you were wishing maybe about ghosts, but you didn't see one.
No, I didn't. I didn't actually see one until I started working with the Peoria State Hospital. I had just glutted myself on ghost stories ever since I was a small child. My father, I cannot remember not being able to read. I cannot remember being pre-literate. My
Uh-huh.
father tells me that I taught myself how to read when I was 2, and I've never looked back. I would rather read than do just about anything else. So I have read a lot of ghost story books, and there are so many out there. I just bathe in them. It's wonderful. And just every story I read has its own element of wonder and a little bit of terror and this idea of communication. And that is what really keeps drawing me back to these stories and these places and these experiences, is that sense of communication.
Uh-huh. So how old were you when have you ran into a spirit or anything?
Oh, yes. The first inkling I had that there was something out there that could actually be experienced. I was in college, and I was fortunate enough to make a couple of trips to England on various college programs, exchange programs, and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
And on one of those trips there, I had a bit of free time away from classes, and I was at Warwick Castle, and outside there's a town of Warwick too, and in this town there's a church called St. Mary's, and there's a crypt underneath.
Uh-huh.
So I went down into the crypt, and I'm poking around. There's gravestones in the floor, and there are a couple of doors where they had barred windows, and you could look in. It was basically like a mausoleum.
Uh-huh.
And I looked in there, and you could see where there were 3 like biers or spaces for a coffin on each side of the wall. And I remember looking in there and just getting this weird feeling from it was like the middle bier on the left side. It was very specific. And the feeling was just, you don't belong here. This is a place for the dead. You are not dead. You need to leave now. So I did. Right. And it was just kind of some nebulous thing. I didn't see anything. Nothing pushed me away. Nothing scratched me or anything. It was just this feeling of, you are really not supposed to be here. But I started writing fiction. I wrote fiction for many, many years, wrote horror and romance, fine line between the two. But
yeah. Now you can say that again. Oh, yeah.
Really loved the horror fiction. And I was contacted by a publisher to write a book of true ghost stories. Now it just came full circle for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've loved true ghost stories ever since I was a kid. This is a childhood ambition come true. I get to tell my own ghost stories now and thrill somebody else with my stories, and it was great. So it was while working on that I realized, hey, these stories have to come from somewhere. Other people go out and they have these experiences. They are paranormal investigators. This is something I could do too. So I was fortunate enough to find a couple of groups that would let me play with them, and they taught me everything I know. And I used to be a little baby ghost hunter, and now I'm a grown-up ghost hunter, and I'm very pleased to do what I do. It's very interesting, and I meet a lot of fabulous people and have a lot of wonderful experiences doing it.
Do you do it often?
As much as I can. I do work full-time, and I do write books, so I don't get out as often. And, oh, man, I was supposed to go up to an amusement park, which is about 4 hours north of me. Well, 3.5 hours north of me. And yesterday, it started snowing.
Oh, boy. That would stop that.
Yeah. Everybody else that was going was already up in that area. They live up in that area. But I'm 3.5 hours south, and I'm like, oh, dude.
No way.
I could drive up there, but I would have to. There was something here in Peoria that I had to get back for at a certain time. I'm like, I don't want to rush back on snowy roads.
Oh, wow.
And then it ended up that last night, we didn't get any snow at all last night. But it all went north of us, which is where I would have been going. So it's just as well. So.
Well, have you been into any creepy cemeteries, looking for spirits?
I have. Oh, yes. I have been into quite a few cemeteries, and you can actually get creepiness during the day in some of these places. I have made a couple of trips to the cemetery outside of Monmouth where I went to college. It's called Sugar Tree Grove Cemetery.
Now, where's it? What state is this in?
Illinois.
Illinois, okay.
Yeah. So I have a little radio podcast myself, and it's called Lights Out, and I made a show
wait a minute.
about
Where can they find Lights Out?
Well, the best place to go is either sylviaschultz.com or sylviaschultz.wordpress.com.
Okay.
And on either of those pages, there is a little thingy that says Lights Out right at the top of the page. Just click on that, and that will take you to... I just posted episode 53 now.
Oh, it sounds like you've been doing it for a while.
I have, yeah. I was very fortunate to kind of luck into this. Somebody else, a horror writer actually got me into it. He was doing a radio podcast about horror stories and mystery stories. And he wanted to have a section of his podcast to be true ghost stories. So he tapped me for that. And then he sadly passed away a few years ago. And
that's
people, bad. Yeah, it was a big loss to the horror community. He was awesome. But the people that took it over from him decided they did not want true ghost stories, so I kind of had to strike out on my own. But all the episodes are there. I've got them all collected in one place. So Sugar Tree Grove Cemetery. And I went back there again, and I'm going to be putting together a return to Sugar Tree Grove here in the next couple of months. So that'll be really fascinating for people. The story about Sugar Tree Grove Cemetery is that there was a situation around 1850 or so, I believe, that there was an Native American who killed a white man, and then the white man killed the Indian. A couple other white men killed the Native American in retaliation. There was this big feud going on, and people got killed just because other people got killed. It was a horrible thing. But the interesting thing is that the white man and the Native American are buried at the very top of the cemetery, the very oldest part, and they are on opposite ends of the cemetery, but they're directly across from each other.
Oh, wow. Spirits looking after each other, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So we did some EVP work at the white fellow's grave and asked him some questions. And then I was with a group out of the Quad Cities, Illinois and Iowa. And we went over to the Native American's grave. And there's no name on it. There's no date. All it says is, he too is a son of Abraham. That's his entire epitaph.
Oh, wow.
So the first thing we did is we wanted to show respect.